You've been staring at a blinking cursor for what, 45 minutes?
Oh, at least.
Right. And your chest feels tight, your jaw is clenched, and you know exactly what you need to write.
Yeah.
But instead of typing a single word, you are somehow uh, 20 minutes deep into a YouTube documentary about the history of cheddar cheese.
Which is fascinating, I'm sure, but
Oh, highly educational. But the whole time you're watching it, there is this heavy, sinking feeling of guilt in your stomach because you know you're putting off a project.
exactly.
I mean, maybe it's a massive quarterly report, maybe it's finally cleaning out the garage, or maybe it's just, initiating a really difficult conversation you've been dreading,
Yeah, that's a big one.
but you are actively delaying it. And you're probably beating yourself up right now listening to this, hoping this deep dive will finally give you, like, the magic cure for your laziness.
And, it is such a universal, deeply frustrating experience. I mean, we are culturally conditioned to view that kind of delay as a moral failing.
Oh, completely.
We treat it like a character flaw. Like, oh, you just don't have enough discipline or willpower to get through the day.
Right, the classic, I just need to manage my time better trap. But our mission today is to completely dismantle that myth for you.
Absolutely.
We are going to prove to you that procrastination is not about being lazy, and it is definitely not a time management problem. We've actually pulled together this fascinating stack of research for today's deep dive.
Some really incredible data.
Yeah, we're looking at 2026 psychological reviews, neurocomputational data, clinical MRI brain scans, and some brilliant analyses on the psychology of high achievers.
It really paints a whole new picture.
It does, because we're going to figure out what is literally happening inside your head when you avoid a task.
Yeah.
And the core revelation we found, well, it completely blew my mind.
It changes everything, honestly.
Procrastination isn't you being a slacker. It is actually a deeply misunderstood self-protection mechanism. Your brain is, like, aggressively trying to save you.
Yeah. And to understand why we avoid our work, we really have to look at the physical hardware first, right? We have to look at how the physical structures of the brain react to deadlines and to pressure.
Yeah.
There is this fascinating 2018 study from Ruhr University Bochum that perfectly illustrates this. Researchers basically put 264 men and women into an MRI scanner.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, to look at the actual brain structures of, doers versus chronic procrastinators.
Wait, so they were looking for a literal physical difference in the brains of people who put things off?
Exactly.
That sounds almost like science fiction. I mean, what did the scans actually show?
They found that people who struggle with action control, so the chronic procrastinators, they typically have a larger amygdala.
Okay, the amygdala. I know that's the little almond-shaped cluster deep to the brain.
Yep, that's the one.
That's the threat detection center, right? It's the thing that looks out for danger.
That's its primary job. It's constantly scanning your environment, assessing situations, identifying potential negative consequences, and, sounding the alarm if it spots a threat.
Right.
Now, for you to take productive action, that amygdala needs to communicate with another brain region called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or the dorsal ACC for short.
Okay, I'm definitely less familiar with that one. What is the dorsal ACC supposed to be doing while the amygdala is, like, sounding the alarm?
You can think of the dorsal ACC as the action selector, or honestly, almost like a bouncer at a club.
A bouncer. Okay, I like that.
Yeah. It takes the warning from the amygdala, decides which action is actually appropriate to put into practice, and crucially, it suppresses competing emotions and distractions.
Yes.
It basically tells the fear to quiet down so you can complete the necessary task. But the MRI data revealed that in procrastinators, the functional connection between the amygdala and the dorsal ACC is impaired.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the communication line is just muffled.
Let me make sure I'm picturing this right. So the amygdala is screaming, this task is going to be painful, is terrible, abort mission.
Yes.
But the dorsal ACC, the bouncer, is essentially asleep on the job.
Pretty much, yeah.
It's not regulating that fear or blocking the urge to run away.
Huh?
And if I remember the neurochemical cascade correctly from TED Ed or whatever, when that amygdala fires up, it floods the system with adrenaline, right?
It does.
It initiates a literal fight, flight, or freeze response, which totally overpowers the prefrontal cortex, which is the logical long-term planning center.
That is the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
Your body is biologically preparing to survive an imminent threat.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me my brain treats an unanswered email or like a blank Excel spreadsheet the exact same way it treats a literal grizzly bear charging at me?
That is exactly what I'm saying.
That sounds like a massive exaggeration, honestly.
Yeah.
Because logically, my brain knows I'm perfectly safe sitting at my desk in my sweatpants.
Well, consciously, yes, you know you are safe. But subconsciously, your amygdala doesn't distinguish between physical danger and emotional danger.
Really?
Yeah. Dr. Fuchsius Suroa developed something called the temporal mood regulation theory that explains this beautifully. Her research proposes that procrastination is fundamentally a strategy for short-term mood repair.
Short-term mood repair.
Right. So when you look at that spreadsheet, you don't feel physical danger, obviously, but you experience a rush of negative emotions. Dread, incompetence, insecurity, maybe just profound boredom or fear of failure.
And the brain registers those feelings as an actual threat.
To your immediate well-being, yes. Your brain is wired to prioritize immediate survival over long-term success. So when the negative emotions hit, your brain demands immediate stress relief.
It needs to fix it right now.
Exactly. It needs to repair your mood right now. So clicking away from the spreadsheet and opening YouTube provides an instant, soothing hit of dopamine.
Oh, of course.
It repairs your mood in the short term, completely neutralizing the emotional threat.
Even though logically, I know that watching YouTube for 3 hours is going to ruin my week and make my stress 10 times worse tomorrow.
It is highly irrational from a planning perspective, I'll give you that. But biologically, it is a brilliantly effective, immediate, self-soothing strategy.
Wow.
Your brain successfully rescued you from feeling incompetent in that specific moment.
Wow. So I'm not avoiding the work itself. I'm actively fleeing the feeling the work gives me.
Spot on.
But, I mean, that opens up a massive question. If the brain is treating these tasks as emotional threats, what is so uniquely threatening about our own goals?
That's the real question.
Because especially for people who are highly driven, it seems like the most ambitious people I know are often the ones who struggle with this the most.
The ambitious but lazy paradox.
Hmm.
It's a very specific, agonizing kind of psychological pain. And to understand it, we really have to look at the psychological profile of the high achiever.
Yeah, I really resonated with how the 2026 psychological reviews broke this down. They talk about a concept called the expectation gap.
Yes, the gap.
It's this massive, terrifying canyon between your ideal self and your actual self.
Yep.
Like your ideal self is this superhero CEO who wakes up at 5 a.m., runs a 10K, speaks 3 languages, meal preps, and never misses a deadline.
We all have that image.
Right.
Yeah.
But your actual self is sitting on the couch at 8:00 p.m., eating dry cereal out of the box, scrolling endlessly through social media. And the gap between those two realities creates this crushing weight of shame.
And shame is perhaps the worst possible motivator for human behavior. We
Right.
culturally assume that if we just shame ourselves enough, it will drive us to work harder.
Like tough love.
Right. But psychologically, shame triggers the urge to hide. It makes you want to disappear. And if we look at where this expectation gap originates, it almost always traces back to childhood conditioning.
Oh, interesting. Like how?
Well, imagine bringing home a 90% on a math test as a kid, and the very first question your parents or teachers ask is, what happened to the other 10%?
Ouch. Yeah, I think a lot of people listening just felt that. You learn very quickly that good is never actually good enough.
You learn that love, approval, and your fundamental worth are entirely conditional on flawless performance. The standard becomes absolute perfection, which means anything less than perfection is a direct threat to your identity.
And that leads straight into the fear spectrum that clinical psychologists talk about, right?
Yes,
There's the obvious fear of failure. Like if you never actually start the project, you can never officially fail at it. You just ran out of time.
Right, it's a buffer.
And there's the fear of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that really caught me off guard in the research was the fear of success. I mean, why on earth would someone be terrified of succeeding?
It feels incredibly counterintuitive until you map out the consequences of success for a perfectionist. If you write an absolutely brilliant, flawless report, what happens next?
Everyone expects my next report to be just as brilliant. I've essentially raised the bar on myself.
Exactly. You've set a new, exhausting baseline. Success doesn't bring relief. It brings higher expectations and more pressure. You are continually raising the stakes of your own survival. This traps high achievers in what psychologists call the perfectionism-procrastination loop.
Right. This is where procrastination acts as a built-in ego shield. Like, if you wait until the night before a huge presentation to start building your slides, and the presentation ends up being kind of mediocre, you have a perfect excuse.
You do.
You can tell yourself, well, it wasn't my best work, but I only had 12 hours. If I had a full week, it would have been amazing.
And conversely, if you do manage to pull off a miracle at the last minute and the presentation goes well, you tell yourself, I work best under pressure, I need the adrenaline.
Right. I've said that so many times.
In both scenarios, you fiercely protect your self-concept. Your true maximum potential is never actually tested in a healthy, sustained way, which means you never have to face the terrifying possibility that your absolute best effort might still be rejected.
This completely flips the script. People usually look at someone procrastinating on the couch and assume they just don't care about their career or their goals. But it sounds like the reality is they actually care way too much.
Well, laziness, by its actual definition, is a genuine lack of desire or energy. It's apathy. You just don't care.
Yeah.
But for the ambitious procrastinator, the desire to succeed is deafening. The internal standards are so impossibly high, and the pressure is so intense that the brain simply shuts down the system to protect itself from the overwhelming cognitive and emotional load.
So it's not apathy at all.
Not at all. What looks to the outside world like laziness is, internally, a state of extreme hypervigilance. The inner toddler is throwing a tantrum, essentially staging a strike and saying, I absolutely refuse to perform under these toxic, impossible conditions.
Okay, so if this is all driven by caring too much and having these astronomically high standards, it makes me wonder about the role of intelligence.
How so?
Well, if you are a highly intelligent person, you know the deadline is coming. You know the YouTube binge is sabotaging your future. Why can't a smart person just, logic their way out of this emotional loop?
Because intelligence and cognitive regulation are two completely different mechanisms, operating in totally different ways.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we see this incredibly clearly in the clinical literature, specifically in comprehensive reviews of the I-4.
Oh, the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale. That's
Yeah.
like the gold standard IQ test, right?
Exactly. The clinical data from those tests highlights a vital distinction between a person's full-scale IQ, which you can think of as your overall global intelligence and reasoning ability, and their working memory index.
Okay, working memory.
Yeah, working memory is your ability to hold multiple pieces of information in your mind, organize them, and manipulate them in real time. It is a foundational component of executive function. And the literature shows repeatedly that you can have a brilliantly high global IQ, but still suffer from significant debilitating deficits in your working memory and overall executive function.
I want to try an analogy here to see if I'm grasping this.
Ah.
Let's compare the brain to a computer.
Okay, I love a good analogy.
If my overall global IQ is a massive multi-terabyte hard drive, what is executive function? Is it the processor?
Close, but it's more accurate to think of your executive function, that working memory, as your computer's RAM.
Okay, the RAM, the active working memory that keeps applications running smoothly right now.
Actually,
So I have this massive hard drive of knowledge, but if I have 50 tabs open in my brain because I'm worrying about the deadline, evaluating my self-worth, fearing my boss's judgment, and trying to plan out all 47 steps of a project perfectly in my head, my RAM just crashes.
it crashes hard.
The system completely freezes up, and it doesn't matter how big my hard drive is, I still can't type a single word.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. Yes, your RAM crashes. And the clinical data on individuals with ADHD or traumatic brain injuries backs this up perfectly.
Oh, I bet.
These individuals often test with well above average global IQs. They are incredibly smart, deeply knowledgeable people, but because of neurobiological differences or injuries, they suffer from severe executive dysfunction.
Right, because the RAM is struggling.
Exactly. They struggle to organize tasks, sequence steps, or initiate action unless a massive crisis forces the adrenaline to bypass the system. Intelligence means absolutely nothing if your executive function cannot translate it into goal-directed behavior.
And that RAM crash is compounded by something called the Zeigarnik effect, isn't it? Because the psychological reviews spent a lot of time on this.
Oh, yes. The Zeigarnik effect is a fascinating psychological phenomenon where incomplete or interrupted tasks create persistent cognitive tension.
Meaning what exactly?
Basically, your brain holds on to unfinished tasks much more vividly than finished ones.
Oh, it's like having an app running in the background of your phone, secretly draining the battery all day.
Yes.
If you have an unwritten email hanging over your head, your brain doesn't just forget about it. It constantly pings you at 2 or 2 a.m. saying, hey, we still haven't done this.
And think about the cognitive load that creates for a high achiever.
Yeah.
They spend immense amounts of mental energy overthinking every aspect of a project before they even begin.
Right.
They are planning, imagining disastrous future scenarios, evaluating every possible choice, and trying to predict outcomes. All of this invisible mental processing requires heavy cognitive lifting.
So they're exhausted before they start.
Precisely. By the time physical action is actually required, by the time they sit down at the keyboard, they are already suffering from severe cognitive fatigue. They have completely exhausted their executive function before making a single keystroke.
It makes total sense when you put it in the context of the real world because, traditional intelligence tests measure your performance in a highly structured artificial environment.
Yes, very controlled.
The rules are clear, the timing is set, the examiner is right there guiding you. But the real world is incredibly messy. It's totally ambiguous.
Yeah.
There is no clear metric for when, say, a marketing plan is officially perfect.
Exactly. The ambiguity of real-world tasks requires robust executive function to navigate.
No.
You have to decide what matters and what doesn't. Without that clear structure, the high-achieving, perfectionist brain simply freezes in the face of uncertainty.
All right, so we've thoroughly diagnosed the problem.
Yeah.
Our RAM is crashing, our amygdala is screaming about a grizzly bear that is actually just a spreadsheet, and our perfectionism has us trapped in this exhausting, self-shaming loop.
It's a lot to deal with.
It is. So how do we actually get anything done? If we can't just buy a new planner and force ourselves to stick to a rigid schedule, how do we hack the system?
Well, the most effective strategies all revolve around bypassing that initial threat response and dramatically lowering the cognitive load.
Okay.
And one of the most famous tools for this is Mel Robbins' 5-second rule.
Oh, I've definitely seen this online. You just count backward, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then physically move.
That's the one.
But how does that actually work on a neurological level? I mean, why isn't that just a gimmick?
Because it acts as an active neurological interrupt. When you feel that hesitation, when you feel the urge to pick up your phone and scroll instead of opening the document, your brain is running an automated habit loop of avoidance that is stored in the basal ganglia. If you acknowledge the stress and immediately count backward out loud or in your head, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, you are forcing your brain to focus on a new, distinct action.
Because counting backward requires actual thought.
Exactly. Counting backward requires active attention. It interrupts the automated habit loop and literally awakens the prefrontal cortex, which is your logical, action-oriented center.
And the crucial part of this trick is what you do after you reach one, right?
Yeah.
Do not commit to finishing the entire project. You don't even commit to working for an hour. You just commit to working for 5 minutes.
Just 5 minutes. Because the problem you are facing isn't the work itself. The work is usually something you're perfectly capable of doing.
Right.
The problem is the initiation of the work. It's getting over that massive wall of dread. Psychological studies show that if you can just get someone to start a task, 80% of the time, they will keep going.
Really? 80%?
Yeah. Once you are actually engaged in the work, the brain realizes the threat isn't real, and the perception of the task's difficulty drops significantly.
That ties in perfectly with Dr. Stacy Kim's cake analogy, which honestly completely changed how I view my to-do list.
It's a great analogy.
She talks about deconstructing goals to lower that barrier to entry so you don't trigger the amygdala. You start with a massive goal, which she calls the dream.
All right.
So let's say the dream is starting your own consulting business. If you write "start business" on a Post-it note, that is way too big. It's going to instantly crash your RAM.
So you have to cut it down to a more manageable piece.
Right. You cut it down to a slice. A slice is a concrete project, like building a website or testing one specific service offer.
Still pretty big, though.
Exactly. Even a slice can be intimidating. It can still trigger the fear of failure.
Yeah.
So you break it down one more time into a bite.
A bite. I love that.
A bite is a tiny, observable, ridiculously manageable task. Like if your goal is a clean house, the bite isn't clean the kitchen. The bite is putting away one single sock. The bite is what actually goes on your daily to-do list.
Because putting away one sock or writing one single sentence of an email is not a threat to the amygdala. It completely bypasses the fear response.
But I'll be honest, writing down, put away one sock on my to-do list feels, I don't know, ridiculous. It feels like I'm patronizing myself or like I'm not actually accomplishing anything at all.
Oh, it definitely feels ridiculous to your ego, which demands sweeping, flawless, grand gestures to prove your worth.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is absolute magic to your nervous system. By doing the tiny task, you are actively teaching your brain that the activity is not a tiger trying to eat you. You create a sense of safety.
Ah, I see.
And in psychology, we know that movement creates motivation, not the other way around. You don't wait to feel motivated to start, you start to generate the motivation.
Movement creates motivation. I love that. Now, what happens when we inevitably stumble? I read a fascinating 2018 study in the journal Frontiers that looked at how students handle their emotions when they're struggling to start a task. They studied suppression, which is when you just try to grit your teeth, push down your anxiety, and force yourself to work.
And what they found is that emotional suppression actually makes impulsivity and procrastination significantly worse.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Imagine a student sitting at a desk, their chest is tight with panic about an essay, and they are basically holding their breath, telling themselves, "Stop being stupid, just write."
I've definitely been that student.
The immense cognitive effort required to actively suppress that panic burns through whatever working memory they have left. They drain their executive function just trying to hide their fear, leaving them with zero mental energy to actually construct a sentence.
Interestingly, this study noted that older adults don't suffer from this specific mediation effect as much because over their lifespans, they've generally developed better emotional clarity. They can recognize, I am feeling anxious, without trying to violently suppress it.
Which is exactly why psychologists recommend a technique called distanced self-talk.
How does that work?
When you catch yourself avoiding work, instead of beating yourself up with, "I'm so lazy, I'm failing," you coach yourself in the third person.
Oh, like talking to a friend.
Exactly. You say, okay, you are feeling really overwhelmed right now and you got distracted, but you can focus on one small thing now. Using the second or third person creates literal neurological distance in the brain.
That's fascinating.
It pulls you out of the amygdala's panic state and engages the prefrontal cortex's objective reasoning.
So, given all this brain chemistry and emotional weight, what does this mean for traditional productivity advice? Because the usual advice is to just buy a really detailed planner, make a rigid minute-by-minute schedule, and force yourself to stick to it. Does that actually help?
The clinical research strongly warns against that approach for chronic procrastinators.
Really?
Yeah. Remember what we discussed about ambitious people and their incredibly harsh inner boss? When you create a highly rigid dictatorial schedule for yourself, you are framing the task as a harsh, inescapable obligation. You are essentially acting as a toxic manager to your own brain.
And my inner toddler is going to throw a massive tantrum.
Exactly. The inner toddler rebels. You will find yourself procrastinating not because you can't do the work, but simply to assert your own autonomy and regain a sense of control. You will rebel against your own schedule.
Wow.
The solution to procrastination is never more self-violence, stricter discipline, or more shame. The actual neurological solution is self-compassion.
Self-compassion, which to a perfectionist feels exactly like giving up. It feels like letting yourself off the hook.
It does feel that way, but it's fundamentally an active, strategic choice. You have to consciously forgive yesterday's you.
Yesterday's me.
Yes. The version of you that wasted 4 hours on the couch yesterday watching cheese documentaries wasn't a bad person. They were scared, overwhelmed, and cognitively fatigued. You have to let that anger go. Shame keeps you looking backward. Compassion allows you to look forward. Today is a clean slate.
Wow. So to synthesize all of this, if you are listening to this and you are struggling with procrastination, it is not a flaw in your character.
Nope.
It is a profound biological and psychological conflict. It is a war between your brain's ancient survival hardware trying to protect you from negative emotions, your executive function getting completely overloaded by the ambiguity of the real world, and your impossibly high standards paralyzing you with fear.
That captures the science perfectly. It is a protective freeze response, not a moral failure.
So your call to action is simple. Look at the massive, terrifying thing you are avoiding right now and shrink it to a buttock. Don't commit to writing the quarterly report. Just commit to opening the document and typing one single sentence.
Just one.
Forgive yourself for the time you've already spent delaying it. It's done. Let it go. Take a deep breath. Count down out loud. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and start.
But before we wrap up, I think this entire discussion raises a much larger structural question, one that looks beyond the individual brain.
What's that?
Well, we live in a modern hustle culture that constantly demands both blinding speed and flawless perfection from us. We are constantly bombarded with the curated, highly productive lives of others, yet this system provides us with absolutely no emotional tools to deal with the resulting burnout and existential dread.
That is so true.
We have to ask ourselves, are we pathologizing procrastination as an individual failing when it might actually be a perfectly logical biological strike against a rigged system?
That is something to really chew on. Our brains just naturally rebelling against an unnatural, exhausting environment. We'll leave you to ponder that. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Now, remember what we talked about. You listening to this. Forgive yourself for the delay. Find your smallest possible bite, count down from 5, and take that first imperfect step right now.